Hi guys, I'm Tara Lipinski.
And this is Todd Kapistashi.
And you are listening to Unexpecting, the podcast. Here we go.
Season 2, episode 20
million.
This actually, I was thinking about this as I edited the last podcast, is this should actually be season 3 at some point.
No, it should not. This should be season 2, especially with the journey we're on.
No, but, okay, so this is my storytelling hat. I think season 1, as we've discussed ad nauseum many times, is episodes 1 to 15. Because basically we started the journey, the first one, and it was crazy. Like, oh, when are we going to start doing the podcast? And then we stopped and all this stuff. And then episode 15, we brought Georgie on.
Yeah.
Like, we got it. Like, that was a great, clean first nice season. Then season 2 is sort of the intermediate, like, okay, post that we're still thinking about fertility. We had Dr. Amy on. We had Dr. Beck on. It's like a post-mortem almost of the, our fertility journey. And now, after 20 episodes of season 2, I think, have we done 35 episodes? Yeah, I guess we have. So now it sort of feels like we probably should have started season 3 a couple episodes ago when we really started the surrogate.
Yeah. I mean, I think this.
So how many episodes do you want season 2 to be?
I don't know.
Just indeterminate amount of episodes. We're going to be on like episode 130. Like season 1 is 15 episodes. Season 2 is 87.
No, I think you're right. And I think that this feels very, for me, not that season 2 was, I think season 2, I mean, we didn't know what we were doing, right? Just because like our journey had ended and we were taking everyone on the journey to Georgie. And then season 2, we knew that, there was still so much to talk about, which was fun to do. But I feel like season 3 feels really exciting again, at least for me. Even when I sit here and talk about it, it feels, I guess what it is every podcast is different, right?
But is it really exciting?
Well, it feels like current time, right? Whereas season 2 was just like a regular podcast. This feels like a follow podcast, like the first season was like a follow podcast where it was really like we were on a journey every week learning something, whereas season 2 was just like really talking about, it was like an infertility podcast, where this feels like, oh, we're back in it, which makes me a little nervous, to be honest.
But I was going to say the sad thing about this whole thing, though, honestly, is that the more struggles we have, the more interesting of a podcast it is.
Well, no, I don't want it to be interesting.
But that's what I'm saying.
Sorry, guys, if you're listening.
Season 3 could and should and hopefully be one episode where it's like, no issues with the surrogate. She had a baby.
Well, don't you already feel like, I feel like even today I'm going to tell people an update. I feel like with IVF, and I know that this is probably with any medical diagnosis, but it's just so unexpected. Like it's like you never know what's coming, and you know that it's never going to go to the timeline that you want, and there's always going to be these bumps in the road that you can't really foresee. So I feel like, I think there was a part of me when we were starting this, let's call it season 3, that it was just going to be like, oh, we got a surrogate, oh, great pregnancy, oh, whatever. And I hope all of that is what it is. But like really the first part of the, finding a surrogate, matching with the surrogate was very different than our last journey. And I really hope it's boring, guys. I want you guys to love us and to still listen to us, because you like, I feel like you guys are like family now, like the core group of people that are just always listening, but I want it to be as boring as humanly possible. So please root for that.
But that's what I'm saying. It's going to be hopefully one episode and there's no news.
Yeah, hopefully.
Or a lot of episodes where we just talk about Sully and vacation mishaps.
But I mean, okay, so why don't we do a surrogate update? So we had filled you in about how she was doing the polyp, then the polyp came back, then we did another hysteroscopy, and then we got to stay together, and that was great. And then we were on track to just rest for a month and whatever. But something small popped up in like just a blood work, which is very common. Like I think 40 or 50% of the population just like has these things that will pop up like this. And but there's like protocol, especially with like gestational carriers and just like everything you're going through. Like when people just get pregnant, like they don't sometimes do any of these blood tests. But so there was a hiccup there where there was like retesting. Now we have to retest again and we have to wait and all of this stuff. So we're now in a little bit of a holding pattern. So I don't know if that early January type transfer will happen. So we will just see. I kind of got that news just right before the Thanksgiving break, and then I couldn't call a doctor or anything. I was like, what does this mean? How long is this going to delay us? And is it okay? And all of the things. But our surrogate has been pretty stellar. Like she is just so on it, so on top of everything. And at least like with all of that, I feel so comfortable. But I have been thinking a little bit, like, how do you feel like when we do this, speaking of season 3, like, what do you think we will do? Like completely in real time of everything that's happened? That scares me. Like, you know, saying the transfer is happening today really scares me. Like, I wonder if I will.
We should probably do it like that.
I don't know. I think like anyone listening understands that fear of like when you have something, you know, like this. Like again, that's why I think people sometimes wait 12 weeks to announce something so they feel a little bit more comfortable, because then you're going to have the uncomfortable conversations if it doesn't work. And I think in our first podcast, we did, you know, try to take everyone on this journey, but as you saw, like lagged behind a little bit. And that gave me a little comfort. And I think at the end, when we were really in real time, like we did that last episode and I had like an anxiety attack. I remember that one because it was real time. It was like, guys, we're going to the hospital for a 39-week induction tomorrow. And I just kept thinking, oh my God, if something happens and then what happens to the podcast? You get back on the podcast and you like, that is a terrifying feeling. Yeah. Because that stuff, you know, happens. I hate even talking about it, but you know, my friend Kristen McQuaid, who we had on the podcast, who had a horrible experience, obviously, with stillbirth, and she had texted me yesterday, and she's like, I think there was I don't know if you saw that in the news, so I'm bad with whether it was a football player or basketball player, but I think it was like a 37-week stillbirth.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Yeah. And, you know, she was talking to me about me and just talking to it about me with me. And when I was reading the article, it just is, you know, all of it is so.
You don't remember the player?
I'm terrible with that. No, I don't remember. It's been all over. I feel like seeing it, and he was talking about it, and but anyways, I think we will try to keep it in as much real time as possible. I think social media, I won't do that, and I'll just do that.
I mean, I've said this before, and I should knock on wood, but I think I said this on the last podcast even, but you know, the first time we just didn't know anything. Like we were coming into it blind and then ran into all these problems and didn't know what the problem was and went, you know, years trying to figure it out. I mean, we kind of have all these at least somewhat answers. You're not trying to get pregnant anymore. So it's like,
no, I don't believe any of that because
but what I'm saying is like, I don't know. Like, so
our chances are better.
I guess all I'm saying is the only things we're going to run into this time is like the transfer didn't work. Or like during the pregnancy, something happens. Like those are pretty much the only two things that can happen.
But there's a thing that in my mind, I'm always like, what was if like that batch of like a batch of embryos or something, you know, and then you can't figure it out. Like, I don't know. But again, this is where like a trauma-ish brain goes, where you think of every
there certainly
thing.
Can be a random issue, I think. But most likely it's going to be one of
like
two
if
things.
a transfer doesn't work, or
something
if
up with the surrogate, or
you
know the transfers just aren't working, or maybe there's an embryo. But we, you know, Georgie's batch, you have others from that
guys.
batch,
not
right?
only are we talking about gender, but we're thinking about like which batches we're doing. But Todd is still team girl, and I think I'm officially. Although the other day I kind of flip-flopped. And I went back to girl, but I was kind of officially on team boy. But I don't know. Maybe it's just a game time decision.
I mean, whatever it is.
Also, like people
matter.
are like, oh, let's like have, Dr. Beck pick. And it's like, she's gonna pick a boy because we have
why would we ever, like, when people do that, when people are like, oh, let the
a lot of
pick.
people do it.
Really?
Yes, because they'll pick like the best embryo,
Yeah, but to me,
we have a lot of the
like,
same grades though.
Weird. It's like when you go to I get so mad. I think you laugh at me about this. When people ask like the waiter what they like, I hate that.
I feel like you've done it before.
No, because it's like, well, why go to a restaurant and ask a stranger? Like, yeah, I know they've eaten off the menu, but like they always say like, I don't like seafood. They're like, oh, the like shrimp, whatever is shrimp Diane is so good. I'm like, yeah, shrimp makes me throw up. So thanks.
I feel like you have done that in the past, though.
I never do
yes,
that.
you
ever.
Have done it once.
I do not care what the waiter wants. I care what I want. But I mean, at LA restaurants though, they know the menu so well, and they can tell you like what people love.
Yeah, that's true. Or like their biggest hits.
Go-to. Yeah. So I guess that's fine. But anyway, my point is like, why leave a big decision in like someone else's hands? Like, why would I let Dr. Beck
because I think you're thinking of it that way, where it's just like a random lotto. But I think a lot of times they'll pick, the youngest embryo, the graded embryo, the best graded embryo.
But they shouldn't be deciding if you have a boy or a girl.
Yeah, a lot of I'm like, I still follow a lot of my.
Well, are those people though doing it because they're like, oh well,
we don't care and we wanted it to be a surprise?
Yeah, okay, well that's fine. If they really truly want it to be a surprise, then
that's why, obviously. Yeah. So that's the surrogate update, and then what else has been happening? I mean, is this our first Christmas scene in the back?
No, I think this was last time too.
Yeah, we've been heavily decorating for Christmas.
We got our tree yesterday.
We got our tree, which was really fun.
Can I vent about something?
Sure.
About the cost of Christmas trees in this city. It's insane. What do you think when you were a kid? I was saying this to your dad because your parents went with us to pick out the tree. I was saying this to your dad, like, I think when I was a kid, trees, I remember like the signs or like my parents being like, oh no, like these ones are $35. We got to do the $25 one. Like they were like $20 or $30, maybe $50 by like the end of my childhood. But they were like $50, right? Do you remember how much trees cost?
I have no idea. But we always had a fake tree, to be honest. And then me and you got the real tree, and now I'll never turn back. I had always had fake trees.
Oh, I must have pushed when we got together to do a real tree.
You did.
I can't do fake trees.
Yeah,
real expensive. Trees are amazing.
Yeah,
it's silly.
we get a little OCD though about picking our tree. I feel like. Even yesterday, I feel like I'm the pickier person, and Todd was like,
you didn't care yesterday, really?
Well, no, I think it looked good. And you were like, should we go to the one down the, just check real quick,
really close
have your dad stay here
and
guard this tree. And we go, and I was like on the fence. And then I felt like you were wanting to do it. So we did, and we checked it out. And I'm glad we did, because we felt better, because they were really sad trees. Can we also talk about tree guys?
Well, so it's like... This is going to sound, I don't want this to sound judgmental or mean, but they're like, and I mean this earnestly, like they're like carnival workers where they'll be brought in. They're seasonal workers. But I don't really understand how it works.
But they come from Yellowstone.
They are Yellowstone. They're like
cowboy hats.
Yellowstone characters.
They literally, I feel like several of them had hats on.
Well, the one guy too, when we were talking about like delivery, buckles. We're like, oh, we live out here. And he's like, oh, I've only been here couple months. I don't know where that is.
Yes, because he's from Yellowstone.
Where have you come from?
he's left the TV show
these guys
of
from?
Yellowstone.
But the thing that's weird though is like, it's almost like they're like degenerate, like like Santa's like workshop elves, because they're really good at the tree things.
They're really great.
They know the trees. They know how.
But they don't want to get dressed up like Santa. They want to be in their cowboy.
It's like they train all year to put trees on roofs.
Yeah.
And they bring them out just for that. But there's also like 20 of them standing there.
There's so many
like three
for
people.
each.
It's the most attentive service you'll get in Los Angeles for sure.
Oh my goodness, that makes me laugh.
But what was I was saying about price.
Yeah,
but yeah, it's insane.
It's absurd.
And I know they ship them from like Oregon and Washington. They don't grow, like Fraser firs don't grow in California. But like, essentially for like
and you're going to a parking lot. So it's like,
Yeah.
if you're going to do this, make it magical. I want to feel like I'm going to like the North Pole,
Yeah,
not
I'm sure a lot of the listeners,
Sawtelle's parking lot.
a lot of listeners probably live in suburbs or like maybe even rural. Like when I was a kid, like we went out and it was like a tree farm with like a barn and they had hay rides
Yeah.
and you could like get hot chocolate and you'd either bring your own saw or they'd give you one and
Yeah.
you'd walk out and literally cut
Yeah.
it down and drag it back to your car.
Yeah.
In LA, it's literally they take like, you know, they have blocks that are parking lots usually during the regular year. But
Yeah.
then like a couple months before Christmas, all these Christmas tree lots like pop up. So it's just like 100 trees that are just stacked in a parking lot.
Yeah.
Like that's what getting your Christmas tree in Los Angeles is.
Yeah.
So it's kind of sad. But then also, again, my point is like the 8-foot trees are like $300, $250. Once you get up, like we have a 9-10 foot ceiling, so we can get like a 9-10 foot tree.
It
and
is
they're
pricey.
They're $400+
Yeah, it's
for a
insane.
tree that you're gonna have in your house for like a month.
I know, it is crazy.
It's kind of insane.
Oh, wait, this is going to be a real left turn. I had my first fertility consult. I don't know if I even told you about
You
it.
did.
Oh, I
How
did.
Yeah.
It was really awesome. It was like really exciting, and she works with one of my with my acupuncturist. And at first I was like, I wonder like how much knowledge I would be able to like bring to the table, and I felt like a lot. I felt like pretty good after the call of like actually helping someone and like figuring out that path. So I'm excited about it. I feel like this is something I'm gonna actually
What
pursue.
sort of advice do you think you were like helpful with?
Well, it's because like I know the process and the problems and the questions. I think what I was helpful with was like planning too, right? Of like, do I do another retrieval? Do I, depending on your age, depending on the problem, like, do I go right into a transfer? How many kids does someone want? Like really, because I think a lot of times, especially with IVF, you just, even when you're having problems, you still think, oh, it should work, or, oh, this timeline will work. And it just, look at even the surrogate stuff. Like remember when I wanted to start really early with looking for a second surrogate, and I thought, because, it could take time, and you were like, oh, let's wait. And I was like, yeah, let's wait. Because in my mind, I was like, there's no possible way it would take whatever. Like, I'll wait till this day. I had no idea that it would take this long. And like, things could still keep going where it could be so long, like years. Like, it goes to like years of your life. So like, my now advice for most people is like, give yourself all the insurance, like plan it out as if it could take years, because I think a lot of times it can, and then you could like lose so many opportunities.
Part of me is almost wondering, like, as you
like
talk,
now,
but really, if we really do want a
Yes.
third kid, we probably don't have the luxury of like, let's see what
No.
having two is like, which is going to be harder, and we might want to not have a third.
No,
but
we
like,
want a third, don't we? That's one of the
Well,
most asked
again-
questions I get about, are we having 4 kids?
But I do think it's hard because I again, like having Georgie has been challenging but awesome, and it feels like manageable to have like another kid. I do
Yeah.
wonder though, once you have two, if
You're
it's, like-
outnumbered.
I just think a lot of people, they stop at 2 for a reason. 'cause-
Right. Well, it's financially so expensive, and then you're outnumbered. And I think like someone told me, they're like, oh, with 3 kids, the world's made for like a family of 2, like hotels and things and all of this stuff. But I think, again, we're lucky that we might have, the ability to like figure that out. And they do say families of 3 are the happiest. So we could test that out.
And now a quick word from our sponsors.
I know firsthand how intense and emotionally draining the IVF process can be. The stakes are high, and you want to make every attempt count. Throughout our journey, it was crucial for Todd and me to lean on each other through the many ups and downs. Whether he was holding my hand during appointments or helping me recover, his encouragement was unwavering and inspired me to help others facing similar challenges feel supported. Along with having people to lean on, knowing where to turn for reliable information is crucial on your path to parenthood. That's where today's sponsor, FERRING Pharmaceuticals, comes in. FERRINGfertility.com provides tools and resources to guide you through your family building journey. From practical advice on how to navigate your options to access to fertility coaches for personalized guidance, FERRINGfertility.com is designed to offer comfort and clarity at every step.
One other thing that I wanted to bring up that I'm actually surprised that you haven't brought up to me yet. Have you seen that? Like, so I thought for some reason, I don't know if it's the way it was sort of marketed or just the like little trailer bit that I saw. There's a movie that just came out a couple weeks ago on Netflix called Joy. It's about IVF.
Yes, Aaron sent this to me. I was crying watching the trailer.
Oh, you haven't watched it though.
The trailer, just the trailer. Oh my gosh, it looks so good. It's all about IVF and like the first, IVF baby.
I'm surprised you haven't like watched that already.
It's out?
Yeah.
I didn't know it was out yet.
Yeah, I saw it on Netflix and then I thought in my head, I don't know, for some reason, just like what it looked like, I was like, oh, this is going to be like a Hallmarky kind of like hokey, whatever.
It's going to be good.
It got like really, It was well reviewed. It has like 90%
What's
on Rotten
upsetting
Tomatoes.
is like, why didn't I think of that? Why didn't I go out and pitch, guys, thinking of the next business? I should be thinking of like an IVF based, well, they just did it, enjoy, but like something else.
Too late. Everyone's had that idea, like when it comes out, they're like, oh, I had that.
Well, no, maybe there's something else out there.
But what's the actual story of Joy?
You know what's a great one? What about like a long hauler?
Why are you saying this on a podcast?
Why? Okay. I have a great idea, guys.
When it comes out, we'll tell you about it.
And it's gonna be heavy but good, and I have a great idea.
But what is Joy about?
It's. I think it took place.
But is it about like the first IVF baby, or is
it's like when they like
figured it out,
quote unquote, figured out like test tube babies
what
of like trying
that? Like
it out.
Early 80s or late 70s?
I don't know when this was, because I think it was like probably like the very start of it. So who knows when that was even being tested, and how people thought that these people were like out of their minds. And I can't wait to see it.
Just think about how like values change, and clearly we talk about this a lot on the podcast, but clearly there's still a lot of people who think IVF is wrong and evil and devil's work. But I think generally speaking, most thinking people accept it as a scientific thing that happens in life to help people. And just thinking back in like the 60s and 70s, it was probably like, oh my gosh, like
this is insane.
Why are you messing with this?
Yeah. Well, speaking of that too, I think it's all about like knowing about reproductive health in general. Like if people actually back then thought about that, like some woman is infertile, like her ovaries don't work, she has a problem with her uterus, like really thinking, I think people just think like, oh, it's like a fun thing people want to do. And I'm like, this isn't a fun thing, it's because you're medically needing something. And I read this fascinating article yesterday about like just women's health in general. And it was about partial and complete hysterectomies, like when a woman takes out her uterus. And really at the end, all I realized was like, wow, women don't really know. Even me now, like when I was reading this, I was like, wait, like this is crazy. If this happened to me 5 years ago, I probably would have been on an operating table and the same thing would have been happening to me. Like there are women out there, they did a study and they kept breaking it down of like someone had a hysterectomy because they had fibroids, right? But then like they did a complete hysterectomy, which means they take your ovaries and they take your fallopian tubes and they take your cervix and they do everything is gone, which then puts you right into menopause, which could cause other problems if you're going into like early menopause, like cardiovascular disease and all of these osteoporosis, like all of these things. And this woman was talking about her story that she didn't know. She thought they were taking out her uterus for fibroids and like didn't know. And back in the day, doctors in like the 90s was like, when in doubt, take the ovaries out. So like they would just take everything out, even though the ovaries are such a huge part of like a woman's vitality in so many ways. And it was just so fascinating because they did a study of like the people that even did these surgeries, like 30% of the women didn't know, they thought their ovaries were out, but they still had their ovaries. Like it was crazy that there was like one person on the operating table where the doctor asked then, like, do you want a partial or a whole? Like there's a chance like you'll be needing another surgery. Like clearly maybe she had like endometriosis or some pain. And like, I have no idea. And so she's like whole, but like had no idea what they were actually going to do in there. And to be honest, like until when I thought about a hysterectomy, I think if most women, you just like stopped in the street, they think it's your uterus. But a lot of time, now they're changing this, and like hopefully doctors are like sitting down and consulting with you and telling you all of these things that could happen to your body. But like if you asked me before, I would be like, oh, your uterus is out. Like I had no idea that they take, part of your cervix. They take, like, I had no idea about this, but it just goes to show how like ill-informed people are. And like, I don't know why, right? Like,
yeah,
why?
I think it's because people, I think it like, and this sounds silly, but we just got through the election, and I feel like it's the same thing with politics. Like people, like I think people who, a small percentage of people who like are very passionate about politics or a political issue and follow it and watch whatever you watch, Fox News or CNN or MSNBC, and you watch it every day and you're so dialed in, like you get so mad at the rest of the public who you feel like they interview on the street and they're like, oh, who are you going to vote for? And the person's like, well, I don't know. I'm still thinking about it. It's like, what? Still thinking about it. Like there's nothing to think about at this point. What do you mean? And I think what you realize though is that there's an arrogance to like, I don't know, A, interest, but B, like having the time to like understand something that's complex. Like politics can be complex. Like I think medical stuff can be complex. People who are grinding away at jobs or have 5 kids or whatever it is, people are busy. So I think like understanding medical things especially can be overwhelming. Like I even think of my parents who are, older and they're going through medical things. It's like I ask them questions and they're like, oh, well, because it's like, it's hard to like understand why you're getting this medication or like, the side effects or.
Well, and I think also there's just like this belief that like doctors completely know what they're doing. And this article was crazy because they're like, in the 90s, we just did that. And this one doctor wrote a book about it. He came out now. He's like, I was wrong. Like, I was wrong. I wrote this book and I was wrong. And now like women should try to keep their ovaries, unless obviously if someone has cancer and there's genetic things, like there's reasons why you outweigh risks. But I think you just trust.
Well, yeah, it's also
doctors.
It's a sort of like weight off your own shoulders, especially if you're going through a medical issue and you're like, well, this person went to school for 8 years for this. I don't know. It's really hard to understand.
Well, I think it's also like women's reproductive like health is so hard to understand because everything's connected in there, right? Like whereas like you go for your knee, of course, if you came out and like they took something out of your ankle, you would be like, wait, I went for my knee. Why did you take something out of my ankle? But those things are so not connected. Whereas like your fallopian tubes, your cervix, your uterus, and how it's like pumping these hormones throughout your body, whereas like your knee is your knee, which makes it more complicated. But I think that also makes IVF more complicated too, right? And I think that's what a lot of people don't understand because it seems so straightforward. Oh, they're just taking eggs out of my ovaries and putting it in my uterus. Nothing can like be that hard. And it's like this magical, mystical way that your body works when it's like trying to get pregnant or sustain a pregnancy that is like, I think even doctors don't always 100% know, where it's like much easier when you're looking at a knee and being like, oh, wow, you tore your ACL, let's fix it. So,
but I think, I think in a perfect world, everyone would want to be super diligent with all this stuff and like, oh, I'm going for a knee surgery. Like I understand, I've researched it for a few months. Like I know what the doctor's doing. I know the risks. I know the choices I need to make based on me, like to tell the doctor, like we all would wake up in the morning and want that. I just think the reality is it's complicated and we don't have time for that in a lot of cases. So we just trust a doctor to know, which, like as you said, doctors can be wrong. Which we're realizing a lot. Or experts can be wrong.
I mean, they're human, right? And like there's new research coming out all the time. Well, anyway, I thought that was interesting. I feel like next time we talk, we'll have like a really good idea of if a transfer and when a transfer is happening, which will be,
and maybe it'll be season 3 next week.
Yeah, maybe we start season 3. Maybe it feels right to start season 3 then.
We'll see.
Oh, if there's anyone that struggles with endometriosis, one other thing is that And I think a lot of people that listen to this are infertility IVF people. But if you have symptoms, if you don't know what to do, I'm really working with this incredible company we've talked about because they also are involved in IVF testing. And I think there's going to be something that's going to be sort of like life-changing for people. And of course, like if you really go into it, no test is perfect. There could always be false positives and things like that. But there's really been no testing for endometriosis. And I can't wait to because you can't really, even testing, it doesn't diagnose you. But there's like little paths then that like can open up bigger doors for you to understand what's happening in your body. And I've been like heavily involved in working on this. And I'm really pumped to talk about it more when it will come out. Anyways, cool. Okay. I think that's all.
Okay.
All right.
See you next time.
See you next time.
Bye, guys.
Thanks for listening to Unexpecting the podcast. Please subscribe, leave a review, and follow Unexpecting Pod on Instagram for info about upcoming weekly episode releases.